Logix, congratulations for the qualification to the knockout stages of May Melee. Maybe a closer game than we would have expected. How was it for you from your point of view?
I'd say it was definitely closer than we expected, obviously. I think people consider London a pretty weak team, and I think what we showcased in our first two games was far better than what we showed this week, both in our previous game and this game. Overall, I think we have a lot to look at before we play Mayhem tomorrow, but we'll get into the knockout, and that's what we're focused on right now.
You got to play the first map. Did you? How is it playing against these European teams on that ping? Is it a big disadvantage? How are you feeling playing that?
It's definitely a bit of a change up. I mean, obviously throughout the week we get to practice on just normal East Coast ping, which is about 30 for us. Heading into the games versus the European teams, we play on 90 ping with minimum latency. It's a disadvantage, but I'd say not as much for them. Not as much as it is for them because I mean they have players that play with 120 up until 170, I think, depending on where they're from. I think Ripa is in Finland and he's playing with near 180 ping, so obviously that affects them differently. I'd say 90 is a baseline where things are slightly different, but it's still very much so playable for us. So it's not the biggest deal, but yeah, it's a little bit of adaptation.
Sure. Now, you came in for the first map. Can you explain what your role currently is in the team? Because we saw you playing Symmetra, we see you playing McCree. Of course, you have the Tracer. What roles do you inhabit in this team?
Yeah, so obviously coming into the team, having three DPS players, I think right now the way we look at things is Hisu's our main DPS player, Nice is our flex player. I'm the player that's mostly focused on long range hit scan. So think of your Hanzos, your Widowmakers. Obviously I'm able to play McCree, Tracer, Soldier if needed, right? I can play a bunch of different things. Heading into this match, we had already practiced certain comps, certain players on certain maps. I was meant to play more maps, but with our loss yesterday, things got kind of turned upside down, and we decided that for the better of the team, we would still play me on Li Jiang because it would be experience. I basically haven't played official games for like 8 months outside of one map, so I definitely want to get in there and I want to play pretty much every map I can, right? But I mean, I did agree. We had a sit down, we had a meeting where we said, for the best of the May melee, we should just get as much practice with our Korean roster because right now, with the current things happening with the team, that's where we have the best results. So yeah.
Now, that's an interesting question in itself because very often you're the one non-Korean playing in that team. How is there a language barrier issue for you?
I think it's hard to say that there isn't. There's definitely varying degrees of being good at English in the team. We've obviously had players who had experience on talking English in teams. We've had players who had absolutely no experience. So obviously they have their own journey to get better at English. I'm trying to help them as much as possible. It's definitely harder with some players than others. I think right now it's just for the team to perform at their best. It is obviously easier for them to speak Korean, and for me to come into the team. I still, I'm confident. I consider myself a really good player. I consider myself better at some heroes than maybe Nice or Hisu. But right now, for me to come into the team and take a spot is I don't just have to be just as good or slightly better. I need to be significantly better because when I come into the team, it also forces our communication to, our structure of communication has to change, and that's definitely a hurdle that we have to come over. Obviously, with time, hopefully their English gets better. I'm trying to help them out as much as possible, but that's kind of just, that's kind of a hurdle we're facing. Regardless, I trust my teammates. I try and help them out as much as possible.
Helping out is a good keyword because I think there's a knowledge gap for people in the community, not knowing what a player that isn't currently playing contributes towards the game. What do you do in the dugout? Do you talk to the coaches, or like do you prepare like comments towards your team, and then in the pause or a break you communicate that to the team? What's the process?
I mean, obviously, I think a lot of work from a player that's on the bench for most of the time is during the week of practice. I think leading up to a game, you obviously spectate more often than not the player that plays the same role. Obviously, being in Overwatch League for so long, having played many different metas, I can try and see what's different, things that have previously been played, and just try and give tips there. Um, and then during the game, if I notice something, I'll say it. But I'd say during the game, KDG mostly takes the lead and helps the players out that way.
Right. Now going a little bit into this game, um, some maps were actually really competitive, and one that you ended up losing was Volskaya. So, from your point of view, what went wrong, especially on attack?
For Volskaya, it's again one of those cases where we ended up practicing with Beast for majority of the 2 weeks. You know, we had our bar week where we didn't practice as much. Leading up until this week, we practiced with Beast. So I think the communication structure in that regard changed as well. I mean, technically, it would have been easier, right? Because obviously they were able to speak Korean. Sometimes it's hard to analyze for me on the spot where things went wrong, because I think a lot of that composition specifically is about communication and about managing your ults. Obviously, a lot of it is being spoken in Korean, so on the spot it's hard for me to. I think in general, what we think, I think what we struggled with yesterday and today was mostly just people getting their head into the game. It felt really like, I think yesterday we didn't really play Overwatch, and then today we were kind of getting better into it, but it really does have to, be stepped up for our game tomorrow against Mayhem.
Is Beast a specific player that plays for a specific hero? For instance, like I would imagine he would be taking the ball duty. Does that communicate you guys wanted to play ball on Volskaya then?
We were still gonna play Winston. I think right now, if you look at players specifically, I think more of it is I would think more of it in a way as certain players are prepping certain maps for the team. So obviously me, Astak, and Beast would be the clear examples. I would consider the rest of the team the core. So you'll see us on specific maps where we have practiced, and we've had a little bit more time to set that up. Again, with losing yesterday, we just prefer to have more practice time for our game here into tomorrow with the Korean roster. But yeah, I wouldn't think of players necessarily restricted to certain heroes. I think especially with Ball as well, I think we saw in his map where we're very strong, where we've previously showcased that we like playing Ball Tracer. I think that comp especially, I think Sado's really prefers to have a Korean Tracer because the communication is so important. So I think if we end up playing Ball Tracer, it would mostly be Beast and me or Sado and Nice.
Right. Now, the competition you've had so far and the 4 matches, other than the Washington series, it's hard to judge where you guys are in the hierarchy of teams. Where do you see yourself, and what kind of damage can you do at Melee?
Yeah, I think we've definitely had a varying degree of. I think the teams we've faced hasn't given, I think, people the best idea of what we were at. I think even if I didn't have any more information, I would have a very hard time assessing the team Toronto Defiant as a whole. I know from our performance in scrims that we are doing good, I'd say, and I think we're not showcasing that in matches, which is, it's hard to back that up, right? Because obviously a lot of it is behind closed doors. I think our own expectations are significantly higher than what we're showcasing, which is also why it's just as frustrating for us to, absolutely get stunned by Washington. I don't think we need to beat around the bush there. That was a very tough series for us, and that definitely made us realize, like, damn, I mean, something's got to change. Something, just got to keep our focus up and do a lot better than we did there.
Right. Now, if Defiant win the first game tomorrow, you will have played 4 matches within 3 days. Is that advantage? Is that a disadvantage? Is that something that you like doing, or would you rather prefer to play less matches? What do you think about this format?
Thinking about this format, I think it really depends on the maps, honestly, because there's maps where it's pretty much laid out what you play in certain comps. I think today Lijiang is one of those maps where we were able to play a little bit of a cheese strat, obviously coming out in Gardens with Symmetra, Winston, Doom, where you can play that hyper aggressive. I don't think that's as easy to do on every single map. I think we've seen more creative plays this season than we have other seasons, but I think stylistically, it might be better to not play as much this season because you do end up giving up a lot of information.
Right. Now, as a last question, mathematically, right now, it seems likely that you guys will be facing the Mayhem, your old team. Is there any special feelings towards facing them? Is there anything you wanna say towards them if they actually end up being your opponent?
I'd say, I'd say it's pretty hard to still have, there's no ex-teammates, there's no extra relationship that I still have within the organization. I like the organization as a whole. I know Albert, their manager. He's a really funny dude. He's a really great dude. But as far as the team goes, I have no relationships there, so it's kind of just another game in the way.
Right. Sweet. Then thanks for the interview and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you so much.